welcome back to We're Talking About. My name is Kaley Gray, and I have a very special guest, probably one of my favorite guests, who is back again for the new season, and that is my sister, Kennick.
Hello, everyone. I am back. It's an honor, a privilege, and I'm happy to be here. It's been a year.
It's been a year since when I had you on, so she visited me this summer, and so we are filming this episode early than what you see it. But anytime together, I'm like, girl, let's do a podcast together. And so it's just so fun. I love her banter, her humor, her wisdom. She's actually pretty smart for being so young.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll take it. I hope that's true.
It is. I wouldn't lie on the podcast.
Okay, good.
Gotta speak. I always speak the truth. So, but if you have not subscribed to this podcast, please be sure to do so. You can follow me on my social media, as well as you can listen to this on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all the things. And if you'd like, please give us a 5-star review, just to help the algorithm to get it out there. Share it with a friend, because I love doing this. I love just talking about all these fun topics. And so today is kind of a fun, I wouldn't say it's not really a fun topic. Yeah. It's a topic that I feel like a lot of people have been talking about. And so we're talking about being love bombed. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't say I was like a complete love bombed. I don't think I was completely love bombed when we were like researching and like understanding more of what it is. But I do say there are some instances where I feel like I was a little bit love bombed in past relationships.
Yes.
Yeah. And you, like, do you see, you probably like see it just from conversations that I've had.
Yes, for sure. And then like, even talking with people, where it's like, oh, not in the moment do you always realize it, but maybe like after a relationship is over and like you're talking with people, and you're like, well, maybe that was love bombing. Like, yeah. Looking back on the whole relationship.
No, it is. It's so true. So if you don't know what love bombing is a manipulative tactic often used by individuals to gain control over someone by overwhelming them with excessive attention, affection, and admiration. And so the purpose of love bombing is to create an emotional dependency and like a sense of obligation to that person, making it difficult for them to realize that they do have manipulative behaviors and they don't want you to break free from that relationship. And so it's usually happens in the beginning stages of a relationship where it is a really quick, intense bond. And there are those guys where you're like, oh, they just know what they want. And they're just, and then now I'm like, oh, maybe that was a little too much. Like, when you think back, from past relationships, you always learn from something. But so Kennick, what is like a sign? So we talked about like what love bombing is. Like, what is a sign that you were love bombed?
Okay, well, a first sign would maybe be like intense attention and affection. And like, I'm going to say it's not always necessarily bad, but when it's like extreme and excessive. So when the person showers you with constant compliments, gifts, and declarations of love very early in the relationship. So they're like frequently expressing how special and unique you are to them, often making grand gestures. Yeah. And so I feel like it's not always a bad thing because especially like at the beginning of a relationship, you are like trying to express that you're interested in someone. Yeah. And maybe some people are a little more intense with it. But if it's an alarming...
Yeah, I definitely think back to like one relationship where the guy within 24 hours was over the top declarations, expressing things. And I was in my 20s, still like probably a little naive to different things because I'm just like thinking, oh my goodness, I found the one. Like he's saying everything that I want to hear. He wants to build me a house. He wants to do this. He wants to do this with having a future family. He just keeps complimenting me, saying how grateful and thankful he is for me. Mm-hmm. And at that moment, I was like, I didn't see anything wrong with it, but later realized like, oh, that was kind of a red flag. That was a little
24 hours of knowing someone.
Yeah. And we hadn't even met. It was just like, Yeah, just pictures, and I think
Yeah.
it's from a dating app or something. So yes, that was one. So so another thing that you might see is like rapid advancement in the relationship. So your relationship progresses extremely quick. With that person, maybe they're wanting to move in together or get engaged right away, or like make long-term plans over a short period. So like they want the commitment very quick, like immediately, which again, like there's nothing wrong. Like I'm all about accelerated relationships, like having peace and wisdom from God, not about moving in together like right away. But you know, I do know some people that have had quick engagements and things like that and quick relationships, but I think you have to be mindful, like what is the purpose? Like, are you having peace behind this, and like you're the one wanting to have the same feelings as that person, or is it more one-sided and you feel like you have to say yes to that person because you're afraid they're going to leave you and move on to somebody else?
Like, that's exactly right. Before you said, I was thinking, like, does this person have peace? Like, when you're making big movements in a relationship with your partner or whatever, like, you gotta have peace about it. Especially, you shouldn't be scared or threatened that they're gonna leave you just because you're saying, like, no, maybe I don't want to move in right away. Maybe I'm not ready to necessarily be married
Yeah.
in the next month.
No, it is. It's so true. And so I think those are really big things. And yeah. So what's another one that you see?
Like excessive communication. So they are constantly sending you text messages, phone calls, social media interactions, often expecting an immediate response, and they may become even upset or anxious when you don't respond quickly. And so, like I said earlier, like I think beginning a relationship, you're definitely like, when it's newer, you're gonna be like texting a lot. Like you should be excited to be like talking to your partner or like this new relationship. Like it's exciting, but like you also shouldn't be fearful of like, oh my goodness, if I don't respond within the next 5 minutes, they're gonna be mad at me.
Yeah.
'Cause that's not healthy. Like,
no, that's not healthy whatsoever. Which I also like, I think like, you know, you don't have to be texting all day or like doing things. I mean, that's probably like a generational thing. Like,
well,
can
I
be
still
different.
agree. Like it probably shouldn't be like over the top, like constant. Like, but I do like find like talking with people I know, like when you're starting something, like you're excited, like you want to like see them and talk to them.
Oh, 100%. But I think the biggest thing with that, with the excessive communication, is if you become anxious or upset, that if you don't respond promptly, like this person is going to be mad at you.
That's like not okay.
No, it isn't. And so I think, yeah, just being mindful of that. Another one is like isolating you from others. And so this person could possibly try to isolate you from your friends, your family, other support system, and make them the central figure in your life. And so they might criticize, they might speak negatively over your loved ones and try to create a wedge between you and them. And I have seen that happen countless times with different friends over the years, where they get into a relationship and they get completely pulled away from their friendships, from their family, because this person just wants them for them, which I do understand too. Like when you're in a relationship, you just start in a relationship, you want to be with that person and spend time with them, but you also like, things are going to change. Like you can't hang out with your girls all the time or things like that, but you have to like have people involved in your relationship, your family, your friends, you know, making time to go do that, because your life cannot just be committed to that one person at this point. Because like I've said before, like when you're dating, like if you break up, what happens when you just spend all of that time with that person? You don't have any more friendships or support whatsoever. And so I think there's healthy boundaries in relationships with like friendships and family members. But if this person like is completely like criticizing negatively over your family and like pulling that wedge, that's something you need to be like, okay, is this healthy for me?
For sure. Lots of reflection needs to happen, because if things go wrong in the relationship, you are going to want those connections with your friends still, your family. Those are like your main people. And especially like when you're not married to the person yet, like, you shouldn't only designate your only time with them.
Yeah.
Because, like, you do need those friendships. Just,
yeah. You do. Well, even, like, it's a little different when you are married because that person is your person and that is your priority.
Like, that is your priority.
But you also, like, it's important to have other relationships even while you're married. But dating does not mean you're married. And I think so many times people think that, and you're not even engaged. They'll be like, that is not married. Like, married is when you're married, you know? And so, yes, I think it's definitely just a sign to be aware of and to look out for. Sure. I mean, having that happen is not just love bombing. It's major red flag. All right, what is another one?
Okay, the overwhelming need for approval. So they're constantly seeking validation from you and assurance of your feelings for them. They're often, maybe, possibly making you feel guilty or responsible for their emotional well-being. They may use phrases like, "You're the only one who understands me," or "I can't live without you," that's a lot of pressure to put on another human, I think, especially if your relationship's really fresh and everything too. I don't know. That's just a lot of pressure to put on someone.
It is, because I think, well, it's kind of a red flag if they're like, "You're the only person that understands me." Like, do you not have any other relationships in your life? Because sometimes that is a red flag and alarming to me when a guy doesn't have like healthy male friendships with people. And so, like, when they're using like phrases like, "I can't live without you," I've had friends that have been in relationships and guys have threatened to kill themselves if they break up with them and say like, "It's on you if something happens to me." And that's like a lot of pressure and guilt that you can put on somebody. And that is not you. Like, that is not on you. You should never put that on somebody else, because everyone has a free will to make those choices. And so I hate it when people say that. But it's, the feeling of guilty and like making sure they constantly feel better. That's like another form of like the need. They want you to see that they need you, just you, nobody else. And that's another form of isolation. Yeah. Ooh, goodness gracious. Like when you like hear all these different things, I'm just like, oh my goodness, this love bombing. I'm like, I don't want anybody to ever be love bombed. And so that's a lot of the reason why we did this podcast, just to educate people, because I mean, I think even before I kind of had learned about it and heard about it, I was like, oh, like I've never been love bombed. And then I was like, ooh, well, maybe I have been a little bit. And thankfully, I have had some friends that have been there with me to kind of help me figure that out. But another form of love bombing is like unrealistic expectations. So they place expectations of the relationship on you. Like we said, they become upset, disappointed if you don't meet them. They may idolize the relationship, setting you up to fail when you don't reach those expectations. And I think, they set you on this pedestal, or they want this to happen. And when it doesn't happen, anytime you're setting unrealistic expectations in relationships and you're comparing and you're like, well, this relationship is like this, like, why aren't you doing this? That's just a form of like, it's unrealistic, like in the relationship. And so I definitely like make sure that you can be you. Yes, we all grow and we change in relationships, and there's nothing wrong with that. But just to be careful of those unrealistic expectations, not to set those up on somebody else, and like to make sure they're not setting them on you. So when somebody has been love bombed, and maybe they're or maybe they're in a relationship and they're like, well, am I being love bombed? Evaluate the timeline. Try to figure out, okay, like how quickly has this relationship progressed, and has it felt overwhelming? If you have complete peace, like the last episode I just did with Eden, like her relationship from beginning to end was 8 months, but the difference between all of her other relationships and her current husband, it was just complete peace the whole time. And so I think that when you have God at the center of the relationship, and when both people have God at the center of the relationship, there's going to be peace. But if you're feeling overwhelmed and anxious and anxiety and it's more one-sided, then that's, time to maybe like pause and like, ooh, let's maybe like pull back a little bit. Like we kind of said, checking for isolation, making sure that maybe you do see a friend who is in a relationship and they have isolated themselves. Maybe you're that friend that like just kind of reaches out and just says like, hey, are you okay? Like, just haven't been hanging out with us as much, or just wanted to make sure things are okay, because it's easy for like when you are in a relationship to be so caught up in the relationship. And so, just making sure, like, life happens. You can be busy. I mean, like, there's some friends that I haven't seen in months because life is so busy. But just to make sure that you're checking, they're not being discouraged to maintain those relationships. And, if you are with somebody, like, looking at patterns of, like, control, are there manipulative emotions, or are they trying to manipulate your emotions, and just all the different things. And so, those are just kind of some things to like self-reflect, try to figure out, okay, like, am I creating this dependency on just this person? Or like, are you dependent on God's too? Do you have other friendships, relationships in your life? And so these are just things to kind of think, because you do, when you are in a relationship, you do kind of get that little love bubble, and you get excited and you just want to talk to that person. And so I think these are things just we're not saying like every person's going to do this, or if you're like, oh, this is like kind of happening to me. We're not saying you've been loved bombed, but just like these are things to be like looking for if it has happened. And so like moving forward, Kennick, what is something like somebody can do to like move forward? Maybe they just got out of like being loved bombed, or what is something they could do?
Definitely like seek support. Maybe that's like through close friends or close family members that you do trust, like that you feel like you can be open with without any judgment. Or even like a counselor to gain some perspective and understanding, and honestly understanding of like what you just went through, what's going on, how you should continue, what to look for in the next relationship, and signs to be aware of. Just definitely seek support. It's good to have people around you that that you can trust and love you and want the best genuinely for you. So I would say definitely.
No, that's so good, because I think back to like for that relationship where the guy was being like super, just like pretty much promised me the world within like 24 hours. And one of my friends / mentors, she was just like, girl, that is a red flag. Like, anybody that does this within this amount of time, like, that is not good. Like, you can tell they're just like manipulating you, trying to get you to depend on them and to be with them. And at that time, I didn't realize that. I was literally like so naive, like, oh, this is amazing. I'm so excited. I didn't tell her about it until probably when the relationship ended. And so it was maybe like 3 or 4 months later. And she was like, girl, that's like a red flag to be looking at. And I'm thankful that I knew that now, because it has like caused me to like pause and reevaluate. And, when I do see sometimes like relationships happening and I'm like, okay, like, is this going on? I do like have I call them my board of directors of the girls that I message and talk to, and just have these conversations with, and just be like, okay, am I being blinded by this? Or like, is this a red flag, or do you think this is okay? And so I think it's good to have those. And so another thing to do is like to set boundaries, establish clear boundaries to protect your emotional well-being and future manipulation. So you kind of, I hate it that you have to experience that. And I know, like, as a big sister for me, there's so many things I'm like, oh, I just don't want you to have to go through that. Yeah. And, you know, I can give counsel and wisdom as much as I can. But at the end of the day, like, it's your life, it's your experiences. Like, you have to go through them to be able to learn from them, to be able to move on for the future. Yes. Do I always want you to have to go through them? No. Are there guys that I've maybe wanted to slash their tires? Maybe. But I haven't done that. I'm still here. I'm not in jail. But anyways, it's just like, I just see, I don't want you or you who's watching to have to like ever go through anything like that. And so I think it's good to set those boundaries and sometimes to establish and communicate those boundaries up front so that the other person does know them. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I will say, when you have gone through something, you do learn a little bit more about what has happened, the manipulation that happened in that relationship, and it does prevent you from going through that again. Mm-hmm. So
definitely more guarded.
Yes. And I'm all about guards and protecting. Mm-hmm. That's like what guardrails are for, like on the side of the roads. Mm-hmm. But you also still have to be open and not be like, okay, that person is exactly the same as what this person was, because it's easy to do that, to compare.
Sure, yeah. And that's not always fair.
No. Exactly. And so I definitely just to be mindful and to have those boundaries ready. So what else do you have, Kay?
I'd say like just pray for wisdom. Like honestly, like if you feel peace, like that's a big thing. So like seeking God's guidance and like knowing like what is a healthy relationship and what isn't, and just asking for strength, and like even strength in maybe making like decisions or changes that are necessary, even though they're hard. Like maybe you have to have a tough conversation, but it's needed. Like, and just asking God for peace and wisdom, and just knowing what's going on. Being aware, asking for wisdom of like, am I supposed to stay with this person? Should I continue to pursue this relationship? And if not, just being able to cut it off.
No, that's so good. And I think like through the prayer and everything, like so many people are like, well, I've never heard God's voice. Like, how do I know? Like, you will have a peace. Like, if I definitely can tell certain relationships in my life of different people I've dated where I've felt more anxious and uneasy about it compared to other ones. And I'm just like, you have to go where the peace is at. And even like my mom, there was like a relationship and I was just like, oh, I don't know about this and stuff. Like it's maybe just going to start. And she just like prayed. She's like, okay, like if this is not God's will, then we just pray against it. And less than 24 hours, bye-bye. Yep. Like it just so crazy. I laugh because I always joke around and say my mom has literally prayed away so many men in my life. And at the time I was bummed, but I look back and I'm very grateful for those prayers.
Oh yeah.
And so I've done that too to Kennick and other friends. I'm like, Lord, this is not the right one. Please pray them away. But it is you just to be discerning, and I think just talk to God like he's your best friend and ask him for help, because you know, at the end of the day, like it's your decision. You have the free will to do whatever you want. And so just to be praying for that wisdom and that guidance of like, not only like what the relationship, but just like where you're even supposed to be in life and like what you're supposed to do. And so I think those are just some great things for moving forward. And like you said, Kay, it's like having a hard conversation. Like sometimes you do have to have that conversation. Like, yes, you would want the other person to bring it up, and maybe you're the one that has to bring it up to break up with the person or to end the relationship. And it's hard. It's not the easiest thing to do, but it's needed. And I will say, like, once it does happen, just the peace that you will feel, it's unexplainable, honestly, in relationships. And so, yeah. So anything else you have to say about love bombing?
be aware. I don't know.
Yeah, just be aware. These are just some helpful tips for you to kind of see and make sure you are not love bombed, and make sure you also are not love bombing somebody else, because that could be a thing too.
That's true.
Like girls could
be
definitely
aware of your own actions.
Yeah, because they might not even realize it, and they are love bombing somebody. So overall, we discourage love bombing. We encourage love, but we discourage love bombing.
No manipulation, please.
Yes, no manipulation. So anyways, well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Be sure to come back for the next one, and I can't wait to see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.